Tauros fans, welcome back to All Access. We have a super exciting, fun end to today's
this
episode. This week, I guess, so make sure to stay tuned for the end of today.
The Tauros are back home this weekend for their preseason game. Friday night, puck drop is going to be at 7 p.m. And then Saturday night, puck drop is at 4 p.m. in the West Rink. So be sure to come on out and see your Tauros before the home opener, which will be next weekend. So we are super excited to be back out on the ice and ready for the season to start.
They've been practicing super hard. I'm definitely super excited, especially after Warren Watford now coming back to being at the Mesa. Speaking of Mesa, this week on Ask the Herd, the question is, what has been happening in the Pepsi rink? Someone noticed the different boards. And the answer to that is the Mesa rink is currently hosting the U.S. National Paralympic sled hockey tryouts, which Preslie is going to tell us a little more about, and she actually had a super fun opportunity today.
Yes, I had the opportunity to interview Chris Douglas, who has been on that team before. He actually has won 4 gold medals, so super cool interview. Probably one of my favorite interviews I've ever done.
100%.
It was so different, I feel like, and just also his answers you learned a lot from him in just the 5 minutes I sat down with him. And so we're going to show that to you.
Like, no one's ever asked those type of questions to him.
Right.
Like, he was like, interviews don't normally want to get to know me and my story before just playing, where we wanted to get to know him a little bit more off the ice, which was super cool to hear.
So you're about to actually see that interview. But before we go, we will see you next Monday. We will have a recap of those preseason games, and then we will give you all the information you need for the home opener. So stay tuned for that interview, and we'll see you next week. Hi Tauros fans, I'm Preslie, and today I am joined with Chris Douglas. He is an American sled hockey player. He's a 4-time gold medalist and even has some equipment on display in the Smithsonian National Museum of American History as part of their Everyone Plays exhibit. So thank you, Chris, for joining us today on All Access.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. This is cool.
So first of all, how did you just get involved with sled hockey?
I was introduced to sled hockey when I was 21. This was back in 2011. I was in Florida at a camp for kids with disabilities, and a parent who ran a program kind of like Prairie Grit approached me and said, you know what, I see you're disabled, I see you're fit, would you like to try sled hockey? At the time, I didn't know what it was, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I forgot to get his contact, but then through emails and phone calls, he was at a Cocoa Beach, so it wasn't very hard to find a hockey team in Cocoa Beach.
Right.
They got me on the ice. They gave me all like rental and donated gross equipment to use for the first time, and I loved it. I had so much fun. It was my first time ever being on the ice, and the rest is history. I stuck with it and made the U.S. development team a year later.
You know, challenges in the beginning, how did you overcome those? And what were those challenges?
At the time, this was before sled hockey was known as it is now. There was only about 8 teams in the whole country. Challenges for me was that no one knew about it in Florida, so for me to get ice time, everyone kind of thought I was just a liability. Some of the rinks I had to get my own personal ice time, which, Florida ice is $350 an hour. And then trying to find other sled skaters that would split that bill, that was probably the hardest challenge. And eventually it got to the point where I had to move to get better training, and luckily Minot has been very good to me, so
good.
That was the biggest challenge for sure.
And then are there any coaches or athletes that you say would played a vital role on getting you where you are today?
Yes. In Florida, I had some coaches that probably weren't the best, but I learned a lot from that, especially what not to do. So that was helpful. And then actually one of the skaters out here, his name is Declan Farmer. He was just a little guy. He was 13 when I first met him, and he was already one of the best skaters in the world at that time. I trained with him, and he lived in Tampa. I lived in St. Cloud, Florida. We would meet up at different places all around Florida and skate. Everything he did, I did. So everything he was working on, he had already been through the USA program a little bit, so he knew what the coaches wanted. And luckily, he worked so hard that I could never keep up with him. Every time I'd see him each week, he'd have a new skill mastered at 13 or 14. So he's out here, and now he's, he's beyond the Gretzky of sled hockey. So him for sure.
Yeah, and
if
it's
it
good.
wasn't for him, I definitely wouldn't be here.
And it's good to have like that friendly competition, and kind of wanting to one up each other,
Oh,
and
yeah. It was pretty cool to have, especially out of all the guys are great. All the guys are very good skaters and hockey players, but to have him, in Florida at the same time when I got started, it's a big deal.
Yeah. And then what would you say was your most memorable game?
Most memorable game? I don't know. They're all blended together. I've been checking the boards quite a bit. I don't know. I think every time we win, it feels like it's the first time over and over and over again, and
Right.
especially when we get the World Championships. And when it's a close game, I think those are probably the most memorable because you're actually in a hockey game. You're not just winning 5-0.
Right.
It's 1-1 at the end of the third. So, I think for me, if I had to pick one, it'd be 2019 in the Czech Republic, where we went to OT for the gold medal. And I got goosebumps now. It was so much fun. Those 2019 World Championships in Czech Republic.
Okay. And then what does it mean to you to be able to have that opportunity to wear USA across your chest?
I think the opportunity, it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I've had a lot of really cool stuff happen, but, I think being able to represent your country at one of the highest levels of whatever, whether it's a sport or an occupation, I think it is one of my highest achievements and probably will be, aside from getting married, stuff like that. But, I don't think anything will ever top it, really, unless maybe getting to the Paralympics, at a different type of world stage. That would be cool.
And then what is your message to young athletes that look up to you?
Message to young athletes. I think nowadays, with the way all of our training and health is kind of a big deal, the message is, always keep learning. Don't ever get too smart. And also take care of yourself. I think pushing to be independent to where you can do something like this without having your parents or people helping you too much. Trying to be independent and just taking care of yourself is probably the most important thing.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today on All Access. And Tauros fans, during those preseason intermission games, be sure to come on out to the main rink and see the sled hockey team in action. Thank you for joining All Access, and we'll see you next time.